What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Inside the Tide podcast, the show that's designed to explore unconventional parenting concepts and tools for holistic self improvement. I'm your host, Tyler. I'm a nature based pediatric occupational therapist. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm also really excited to get into today's episode. I have on the show today Kevin Corey. He's a father of three. He owns his own yoga studio in Manahawkin, New Jersey with his wife. And we talk quite a bit about his journey into yoga and meditation and how that's influenced his unique style of parenting and some of the unconventional decisions that he's made to give his kids more of an unconventional life. He also provides certain strategies that parents can incorporate into their lives based on what we're talking about, if it resonates with them. And I know since recording this, I've been incorporating as much as I can in my life from the show as well. So I really hope you enjoy it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review if you enjoy this episode. And here we go. Let's get into it. All right, Kevin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, I know we don't really know each other super personally, but I feel like from a distance we kind of do in a way. So yeah, I'm
Totally.
excited to
Yeah.
get into it.
Likewise. Likewise.
Cool. So I think what we'll start off with is if you could just share who you are and your journey that got you from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kevin. My wife and I own the Yoga Hive, the yoga studio in Manahawkin, New Jersey. Oh, to share my story, we got to keep it a short one, I guess. So I'll give you like the Reader's Digest version. So I came to yoga and mindfulness kind of a little bit backwards. And what I mean by that is like a lot of people come to yoga through like physical movement, right? So like your down dog and your up dog and stuff like that. And then they kind of evolve into this, meditation, more of a mindful lifestyle, those things. So I kind of came in already having practiced meditation for, geez, probably about a decade at that point, like a daily regimented every day, sitting down, just, doing the typical thing. And, yeah, there was a yearning one day to be like, I came from a place of judgment and anger and fear and sadness being felt, feeling like I've never been heard or seen before in my life. And I just felt like there was a calling for me to share that story with people, my story with people, and to like let them know, hey, like you can do this too, right? Like it's going to be hard, it's not going to be an easy journey, but you can do it if you want it, just like anything, right? If we want it bad enough, we can do it. And yeah, so I took my first teacher training in 2013. I took my advanced training in 2015. I took Ayurveda training, yoga therapy, advanced Ayurveda, meditation. So yeah, it's kind of fast forward from, I would say the last 15 years, I've been kind of just doing this. And we opened our studios 6 years ago. So it'll be 7 years in November. And it's been great, man. We love the community and they empower us, I think more so than they say that we empower them. That's what it's all about. And just what joy is it in my perspective? Like if everybody around me is suffering and I'm not, that doesn't make it fun. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm like, hey, how do I help you? And the answer was easy. Like, I'm going to love you where you are, just as you are, not saying like, hey, you have to be this way, right? I'm going to love you because you're just a human like me. Like you've suffered, you've felt judged, you've judged others, you've judged yourself. You've been sad and happy at the same time. You've been uncomfortable. You've had really great moments. You've had really sad moments. So has everybody. So, it's kind of like our goal, our mission, so to speak. We have like our tagline in our studios: love everyone, tell the truth, don't be a jerk. Pretty straightforward, but yeah, so that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of where I started in this place of darkness and judgment and kind of evolved into a more aware state. I guess it would be the kind of the better way. I don't ever like to say like enlightened, and I'm definitely not a master at all. I'm not a master yogi by any stretch, but I'm aware and I'm present a lot more than I used to be through the practices. So that's why I keep showing up.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating too, just how people find each other that are like-minded or on a similar journey to what you had just mentioned. So for listeners who obviously don't know this, back in, what was it, 2018 you opened your studio, or 2017?
17, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I started getting into yoga maybe around 2014, 2015. My wife had kind of been the guiding light to bring that into my life. And when you guys had first started, I just remember going to that opening week too. And you guys had all the free classes and different things going on, like the different events. And Haley and I always talked about it, how cool, like you and your wife are just such authentic people, and you could really
Mhm.
tell it too. And like you said, just really meeting people where they're at. We felt that when we were there, and it was just so cool because we really saw you guys progress, and it was just fun to get to know you guys the way that we did. And so cool to see where your business has come now as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I think that you mentioned one of my key words, authenticity. And I think that people relate to people on all different levels. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about love. And I just said, like, I think that we all have this capacity of loving, right? And some of us have more love than others. And that could be from like our parents, if you're into like the past life thing, that could be from that. There could be so many things that can impact what I call the well of our love, right? It could be 10 feet deep or 1,000 meters. And I said to her, like, loving everyone doesn't give them the okay, or like, it's okay that you hurt me. That has nothing to do with them. Loving everyone has to do with you. And that includes you. And you may say, like, hey, I love you, but that doesn't mean that I have to talk to you. Right. I mean, that's like a weird delusion, I think, that we suffer from. Like, I wish you love. This is the first time I've talked to you in 7 years. I've wished you love since the moment I saw you, and through your journey, through, the story, and seeing the things that you and your wife were going through, and then the birth of your child, and like just loving you, just as you are through your ups and downs. And when I was talking to her this morning, I said, like, some people just don't have the right tools to build the house. They don't have enough. And I think that that's important for people. And I think that when we teach and we're authentic, I think that people relate to that, because people like to feel, like you said, like that like-mindedness, being connected with one another. People like to feel that. And I feel like if you're like this stereotypical walk around like you're this enlightened being or something, people are going to be like, I can't relate to that. I got 3 kids, I work 3 jobs, I got, and then it's like, yeah, I hear you. I have 3 jobs and I have 3 kids, so I know what it's like. Right. And I don't claim to be anybody that I'm not. And I think that that also empowers you as a person to say, like, I struggle, and I struggle sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time. And sometimes I struggle for 3 or 4 seconds at a time. But that's just what it is, right? I mean, I'm a human being, you're a human being. So, I appreciate that, that sentiment, compliment of saying, like, the authenticity, because it's something that we really pride ourselves in, just claiming to be who we are. We'll curse during class. I'll probably drop a few adult words during our conversation, but just who we are, right? I mean, it's just, I'm not going to be somebody I'm not. If you run into me on the street, you're getting this version, not like, oh, who was, like, see me beating somebody up in the parking lot. Then I'm like, oh, namaste. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not who I am. But, so I really appreciate, authenticity is key. Just being true to ourselves is super important. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And appreciate you just showing up and being that in all facets, because like you mentioned, it's the most important thing. And a lot of what the world needs more of, just a lot more of that authentic selves, and people really showing up and being themselves across all environments and platforms and whatever it might be. And it's funny too, like you had mentioned, just about in different settings. I'm by trade an occupational therapist, and being in the healthcare field, it was different just because I would consider myself more of a holistic mindset to certain things, and getting into that environment and that fast paced everything, and insurance and this and that. It was like, whoa, this kind of isn't my thing. But I've really prided myself too in being able to at first needing to really dive into that and be that. And when I was like, wow, this isn't me. And I had to actually feel that this wasn't the true me of what I'm actually here for. And I'm not actually this fast paced, like the way kind of the healthcare field that
Mhm.
preconceived notion that it has. And it's allowed me to really morph more so into the authentic person that I'm trying to be across all facets, and include that with my profession. And now the nature-based therapy and things like that. That's really what I'm passionate about. But like you had said, like it takes a bit of a journey to discover that you're not like you're being judgmental, you're not really being your truest self. And then by the time you realize that, it's just like, wow. And then there's so many other facets of life that you could translate those lessons to as well.
Yeah. I heard a quote one time and I had shared it probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it said, and it goes like, what other people think of me has nothing to do with me. And that was
Yeah.
like, like how much do we do just to please other people? Being a husband, right? And then being a father and a brother and an uncle and a son and a community leader and a teacher and a student. And it's like, I try to put on all these different masks, and it was like tiring, to be honest. It was hard. It's like tiring to be not who you are, and it's like people are like, well, I don't know who I am. And I'm like, well, sit. So I tell people all the time, like, how do I find who I am? I'm like, sit. Like, I don't know how.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, then that's who you are. You're busy right now, and then it's
Yeah.
like, but the reality is how do we find that? How do we find out who we are? We have to slow down enough to see it. I just told my buddy last week, I just said, you act like you haven't been told before. It's just that you haven't been listening. And he's like, Jesus, he just saved me like $5,000 in therapist fees, with that one statement, and I'm like, but it's true. Like, everything, but you just haven't been listening at certain points in time. And then you'll come across someone that's like-minded that, kind of connects with you. And then you go, oh yeah, but like, right? Like, not to judge someone based on their ethnicity, their identity, their political party. Like, that, but you do anyway, right? Like, not to judge this person or this industry, but like you do anyway. And that's just like the cycle of being the human. We know what's wrong. We still do it. Then we feel bad. Then we try to do less of it, So that's why we just tell people, just do less. Make less mistakes and your life will be exponentially greater. Don't put that pressure on yourself, right? Like, I'm never going to make a mistake. I'm never going to make a mistake. That's a mistake in doing that in itself. So yeah, I think once you found and kind of became comfortable with who you are, and whether that means like doing what you're doing as an occupation or whatever it is, like once you found the right size shoes, so to speak, the ones that fit, everything is just like, well, okay. Yeah, I can enjoy this, right? Like I can continue to do this every day. This isn't too terrible. But when you're like going against the grain, and you're like swimming against the current, so to speak, it's really tiring. You're connected to water. So it's like it's a 10-wave set and you paddle out after the second wave and you got to duck dive 8 waves. That's tiring. Or you can just wait for 6 more, paddle out, duck dive 2 waves or 3 waves, and then you'll be out there and get in the lineup, So it's like, pick and choose what you want to do, but you can do both the same thing. You're both going to wind up out there. One's just going to be tired. The other one's going to have more energy. So, I think that it's important to find that. And then I'm very happy to hear, it always brings joy to me when people say that, like, I feel like I'm fitting in within myself, and I think that's awesome. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It especially having felt both sides, it's just a no-brainer. You want to shake people and say like, it's just do it. Just stop caring about what people
It's
think.
so
Be
hard, right?
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's like,
it
what are
is.
you
It's hard.
doing? What are you
Yeah.
doing? Just stop being mean. They're like, but people get so disconnected. And how could
Yeah.
we not? Right? I mean, like, people are going to be listening to this, or watching it on a device or doing something. It's like almost as like this shift of disconnection. And then when it's like, I see people, I just started, I'm going to do a little plug here, if you don't mind. I just
Yeah.
started, this men's support group. It's called Men Supporting Men. And something that's really close to my heart is like men's mental health. And there's a big stigma with men. And I feel like, we can't always share because that signifies weakness. And we're not really taught to be weak or taught to like share our emotions. So I started a free thing at the yoga studio once a month, and it's open to all men. They can come in. We just sit around like this. We share. I pick a topic. Sometimes we talk about it. Sometimes we wind up talking about disc golf or the woods or edible, plants or something. It just kind of has like this organic feel to it. But it's been like the same core group of guys coming every session. And it's been great. It's been great to like see them evolve. There's times where we're crying and we're hugging each other at the end. And it's just a really powerful thing for that side of it, from the masculine side where we can kind of put our guard down a little bit. And not every male feels this way, but like we can put our guard down a little bit and we can say like, it's really hard sometimes. This pressure that I feel being like provider, take care of the bills, fix the broken sink, do this, do this, do this. Like I don't have that turn off. Like I don't have like that when I go to bed and I think like I'm like balancing the bank account in my bed and how do we pay for karate? And you know what I mean? It's like I'm doing all these things. Who can I talk to about that? And sometimes it's like things that my wife does. I can't talk to her about that, And I'm like, what do I do? I don't want to be a bother to someone. And that's why, like, statistically speaking, men unlive themselves at a 3 times greater rate than women. And it's a shame, And that's why I was like, I got to do something, like I have the space, I have the compassion, I have the opportunity and the time. Like, let me just do it. And it's been an amazing journey. Like it's been really great to see people kind of like you said, it's like kind of my way of like shaking them like, hey, you can talk about it. But the way that I do that is just loving them where they are rather than where I want them. And that's hard to do. Like when you're really connected with someone, it's whether it be your kid or, your wife or, family or something where it's like, I love you no matter where you are, even if you're in a terrible mood, even if you're sick in the hospital, like my love is not going to falter. My love's going to stay steady. That's hard to do because it's like when we see the potential in people, I can tell you a million times, but if you're not listening, you're never going to hear it, So it's powerful stuff, connecting with yourself. It's hard. We get those child traumas and that's a whole nother podcast. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's challenging to connect with yourself because a lot of times we do everything in our power to not be ourselves, right? We overeat, we drink, we overshop, we buy, whatever it is, whatever our thing is, we all have something just to like not be ourselves for a minute, and that's where the beauty is. That's where the grace is within yourself. But we just maybe need somebody to kind of nudge us a little like, hey, sit down, be with that. Don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss it.
Yeah. And that's amazing what you're doing too. I mean, just absolutely flipping the script and putting that out there where it's okay for men to be vulnerable and talk about their emotions. And yeah, it's not just like it's this generation, it's centuries and generations where that's not been okay. And it is really cool to see now that there are more things, but there needs to be even more things for men just to come together and be able to be themselves and be vulnerable and talk about those things and cry about things. It's just far and few in between. And the more that it happens, I feel the better we'll progress as a society for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd like to touch a little bit too on your experience as a yoga teacher, as a meditation teacher, and just your own personal journey with that as well, how that has translated into your style as a parent and what it's
Mm.
affected with really your day to day with your kids.
Yeah. Parenting is really weird. Parenting is a strange beast. We do things a little bit different. So we've homeschooled our kids always. This is the first year our oldest is in regular school. We didn't homeschool because we were like anti-schooling. We just homeschooled because we could and we wanted to try it. Like how cool would it be to be around your kids? It's such a weird thing, right? So like our culture in the West is like separation. My house, my car, my job, my degree, my family, my. And then like the further east you head, it's all about like people living with generations in the same home, right? Or like sharing a meal every Sunday with all of their family members. Here it's like, I'll see you Christmas, you know, oh, I'll see you the next birthday. We create this separation. So for me, it's a no-brainer. It's like, I love these kids and I want to be around them as much as I can. So I can, right? I mean, so I just said, well, let's try it. So like we adopted a curriculum. We didn't like kind of go like total, like, we'll just let life teach you. We didn't do that. But like we adopted a curriculum we found online that kind of was like parallel with the school curriculum, but we didn't teach like 10 blocks in math. We just taught them like the old school way, like 5 + 5 is 10. Don't worry about like a 10 block. Um, And it's been great, so our oldest transition, she's in 6th grade now, and they call her the unicorn because they say, like, a lot of kids that transition from homeschool have a really hard time going into mainstream school because, like, a lot of parents essentially are just like, I don't wanna say, like, giving up on their kid, but are just kind of like, "Meh," do whatever, but we followed a curriculum, and New Jersey, ironically enough, being very strict on many things, is not very strict on homeschooling, but, just in case we had to, like, submit a curriculum, I could, like, forward it in a PDF or whatever, you know what I mean? But no schools ever asked for it, and she transitioned amazingly, like, she has all A's and B's. Math is, like, boring for her because she knows all the content because she's been doing 6th grade math for 2 years. Our middle son, he's 8, so he would be in 3rd grade, I think, technically. He's doing 5th grade work right now. Again, it's just why? Like, we as people, not even like yoga teachers, Kevin and my wife, Jen, and whatever, we as people, we're all part of the community, always. Like, you talk about the indigenous peoples to this area, right? Like, we were all a community. Like, hey, you're really good at making medicine. Cool. I'm really good at killing animals. Cool. You're really good at making clothing. Cool. You're good at making shelter. So let's work together and create this community. Let's move together, right? Like the nomads and things of that nature. It's almost like going back to more of like, I don't know if the right word is primal. You know what I mean? But it's like going back to like, my kids can exist and be really good people, but not have to be in school for 8 hours a day. And the only reason, like I said, is we do it is because, one, we can, and two, like, why not just be surrounded by people that you love as often as possible? And of course, like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, you know, kids can be full on sometimes, you know what I mean? And, there's times where I'm like, oh, could you imagine from 7:30 till 3:30, our house is quiet, you know what I mean? But like, we'll get that chance again when they get older. And I don't want to look back and be like, we should have done that. Plus, man, it's like if we're learning about birds, dude, we buy binoculars and we go down to, the lighthouse and we watch birds and we learn about them. We go to, these different county parks when they're having like these bird talks at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, where like kids wouldn't be able to do that in school. Like
Yeah.
you're learning about math and money. Hey, TD Bank, I'm a homeschool teacher. Can I bring my kids down and you can show them how? Yeah, sure. Come on in. Hey, grocery store. Hey, bakery. Hey, police station. Hey, this. Like, and it's like they get involved and they see, in my opinion, more of what it's like in the world rather than like, okay, chapter 8 in 1943, you know what I mean? So it's like, that was also a really big draw for us is we wanted to, I think as in my opinion, a parent's job is a couple things. One is to love our children. Two is to be an example for our children. And three is to give them as much stuff and then let them digest what they will. And then I don't want that. Right. It's
Yeah.
like at a buffet, right? I'm like, all right, Tyler, go ahead, man. That's your turn. You're like, I don't know. I can't eat anymore. I'm like, good. So you ate enough. You took enough in. Now you got to digest it. And then we go. Where like school's 30 kids in a classroom. I have 2. You know what I mean? So it's different. Like today's school, well, the regular schools are closed today. So they went to the library, picked out some books on birds because they're really into birds right now and birding and watching birds and learning about different species. And then went for a walk in the woods to see what they could find. And now they're inside drawing the birds that they saw in the woods. That's it. School is over. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really a cool experience, to see that and to be more hands-on in my child's evolving as a person. And it's bittersweet, because as a parent, it's like I remember, our youngest was born at home on purpose. That's usually people's next question, like on purpose. I'm like, yes, yes, there was a midwife here. Something that Jen just always wanted to do, and we knew that he was going to be our last kid. And because 3 is enough when you're outnumbered, it's no joke. 2 was really cool. Then 3, I was like, maybe not. No, he's great. So he was born at home, and it was like that experience. So it's just like me being part of all these experiences in my life that are maybe different for some people. Maybe not. Maybe people are like, oh, I wish I could have done that, or I don't even know how to do that, have the courage to do it. But it's just really nice to be part of all those different experiences and to offer my kids that, for them to see like, oh, my dad cries. Like every night before bed, I sit down and I say, how was your day? It's the same routine. And they go, good, Dad. I go, good. I go, what is something you were proud of today? And they're like, um, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, awesome. What was something that maybe you weren't so proud of? Yeah, I kind of like lost my temper with, my brother or my sister or with you or with mom. I said, all right. I said, anything that I could have done different today? No, no, Dad, you're legit. That's what I get a lot, which is cool. And I said, all right. Hey, man, I see you and I hear you and I love you. Have a good night. And like, that's something that's important for me. And it's not like, break the generational, it has nothing to do with that. There's going to be a day where I take a breath in and one doesn't come out, or vice versa, right? I take a breath out and one doesn't come in. That's inevitable, right? That's the beauty and the sadness of being in this experience, is it will come to an end. There's no way to beat that. That's a guarantee. And I don't want a lot of my experiences to be things that I don't want to be doing or that I'll regret. So sometimes they are, you know what I mean? Of course, that's what I said most of, right? Sometimes they are, but most of my experiences as a dad and as a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher have been really great. So it's just, I don't know, giving them an experience. And I think homeschooling, if you've been thinking about it and you're listening to this or watching this or doing both, and you can do it, you got to try it. I mean, there's so many resources around. I mean, check with your state, obviously, like if there's some laws or whatever, but if you're in New Jersey, like you pretty much have free reign, in schools, you can put your kids in. The only thing is like school specific sports they can't do, like stuff at the town school they can't do, but like the township wise, like, in Stafford, like they have like Stafford Township soccer, like they can do that. But if it's something at like the middle school, they won't be able to do that because they're not actually a student there. You know what I'm saying? And then people automatically are like, well, what do you do about interaction? I'm like, oh, we just lock them in the basement. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we take them to a park. We go to the beach. We travel. I converted a bus into an RV during COVID. We spent like 100 and something days camping that year. You know what I mean? Like, we take them out. Like, how many friends do you need? How many friends do you have now? 3 good ones, maybe if you're lucky. So why is it like these parents saying like my kids have to have 70 friends and 35 people at their birthday party? Like I have 4 really good friends, like 2 a.m. call you, like those types. That's it. I always tell my son, like, I'd rather you have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. Like
Yeah.
core people in your life, and then when I hear it from like my parents, my dad had said to me, and I may get emotional talking about this story. He had said to me, he's getting older, and I think that he's kind of in a place where I'm assuming when you get older, you have this moment of reflection, in your life. And he had said to me, it makes me really proud and safe to know that your family's going to grow up safe. And that's like, I mean, like, and if like, that's such a huge thing to hear, because like as a parent, like your wife's like, hey, you did really good today, babe. You're like, yeah, thanks. But like, I don't know. There was something more about that for me when somebody's just like, hey, you're doing all right. So good to hear, because sometimes I don't think that I am.
Yeah, and hearing that from anybody, and not to downplay the importance of wives telling us things because that's amazing. You love hearing that,
100%.
but hearing it too from other people, especially parents, it's we were all kids once. All you want to do is make your parents proud. And yeah, as adults, you might say, you might let your ego get in the way or whatever get in the way and just be like, I don't need this, I don't need that. But just hearing that is amazing. And yeah, I mean, throughout my journey too, like some of the most pivotal moments in my life was like hearing that from my parents. Just thinking too, as parents now, like as myself, and you obviously have older children, but just hearing you talk about what you're talking to them about and being open with them about is just the example that I want to set. And I'm sure every parent listening wants to set. And it's hard when we live in a world where work is the priority and when other things are the priority and you let your personal stuff get in the way, because even though we're parents, we're all still children really trying to heal something and trying to work
Yes.
through something. So yeah, just taking that advice, I think is huge for anybody listening, including myself. I mean, really being open to talking things through, to letting your kids know how you feel about that, what they did honestly and
Mm.
vulnerably. And yeah, That's amazing, and it'll change your life. I mean, anybody listening that's heard those words similar to what you might have heard from a parent could know how detrimental it was in a positive way to their journey. And yeah, it's huge. Something
And
that we got to keep doing.
yeah, and I think like, how like being a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher has like impacted me, as a parent is just comes back to that word, two words like love and awareness, right? Like constantly working on deepening my love, that well, and also being aware that like it's okay for my kid to cry. Like you don't want that, right? Like you don't want like your kid to be sad or you don't want your kid to be unhappy, but it's okay if they are. Our job as a parent, again, like I had shared like what my beliefs are, but it's like it's not my job to make sure that they never experience discomfort because I would be doing them a great disservice because the inevitability is you're going to be uncomfortable one day. So when I hear like my children get upset, I just say to them, listen, it's okay that you're angry. It's okay that you're upset. Why do you feel this way? I don't know, dad. I'm so angry. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to know, but just know that like everything, you won't be this way forever, and then it's like almost like a switch goes off in their mind. And then they're like, my youngest like, yeah, so poop sandwich. Ha, 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 ha. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, see? So it's like, right, like 2 minutes ago, the world was ending and you were so angry. And I just loved you for where you were, not being like, shut up, stop doing that. I'll give you something to cry about. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of mentality. It was more just like, that's okay. You're allowed to be sad. So I think like, the practice for me is a little bit different. I look at the word yoga and, it's such a diluted term and it's becoming more and more diluted, than even when I started teaching. And, it was so much about like these fancy postures and getting in these poses and doing all these things. Right. And then all of a sudden for me, it became about unbecoming. So it's like, I don't teach people anything. I just love them. And to me, it's like about unbecoming. So they're now unbecoming like the anger and the judgment and the fear. And, you know, they're when you take all of those layers away, like what are you born with? Love, right? You have a daughter, right?
Yep.
How old is she?
She is going to be 7 months in
Oh,
three
dude.
days.
So good, man. That is so good.
It's
That's
a great
so
time.
great. Oh, sitting up and doing things.
She is, yeah, starting to crawl too.
Dude, game over, man. The crawling is like, where did you find that? Um,
Yep.
that's such a great age. When I look at like the unbecoming, like your daughter was born to love. She wasn't born and was like, mom, dad, appreciate it. Doc, appreciate you and leave, you know, she probably doesn't even know really how to use a spoon yet. You know what I mean? So it's like, we're born loving, whether we were raised by our parents or not is irrelevant, but like we're born loving. We don't care about anything. Like, does your daughter before you pick me up, what, political party do you affiliate with? You know what I mean? Like, of course not. Right. Like, it's just like love, 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 me, and it's complete strangers sometimes that are just like, hi, they're like smiling. And so it's like, that's our born constitution, so to speak, is just loving. And there's, I guess, some theory about like past lives, but let's just say in general, right? Everybody's born loving and we separate ourselves from so much. So that's why for me, it's important to just be a reminder like, hey, you're loved, and that's why I let my kids know, and that's why I think it's important for every day for us. Because what happens is like, there's people that go around and their big push as a parent is to like undo the bad things that were happened to them, to like break that cycle. And I respect that so much. I think it's great. Uh, I also feel we're living so much like in the past and comparing to what it was. I think that like our gut instinct, essentially what I'm getting at is like, we know what is right and we know what is wrong. So let's just do less wrong. Like I said earlier, and I think as a parent and those parents listening, it's may not be like accepted in your community or your group of friends or whatever it is, but it doesn't matter because like at the end of the road, you're not going to look down and be like, oh man, Tyler, he had a 797 credit score. Like, isn't that crazy? You know what I mean? Like we laugh about it. It's like he had a pension that was paying 90K a year. Like the Dalai Lama once said, and I use this quote all the time, and it's great. He was doing a conference in Arizona, I think, or New Mexico. And somebody came up to him and they said, like, what is the weirdest thing about human beings? Like, in your opinion? And he said, humans are the strangest because in the beginning, they risk all of their health to make money. And then at the end, they spend all of their money to regain their health. And I was like, duh, that's so true. It's like, I'm young. I can work 60 hours a week. But then one day you'll be old and sick or tired. And then you'll have to take all that money that you earned and spend it to get your health back. It's crazy.
You can't relive that life that you lost
Mhm.
working because
Yeah.
now, you're 60, 70 and your body started just by nature is going to start failing on you. And yeah, and you said it too, just the stories. I feel that's the biggest disservice that happens to humans in general is our story. And not to say that stories aren't important. They absolutely are. Like where we got from where we are, that's how we relate to other human beings. It's inspiring to hear those certain things. But I think when it gets dangerous is when you grasp so heavily on that. You mentioned just about like the generational trauma. Of course, it's important to acknowledge those things, but to get so attached to it is where it gets dangerous. And the same with, like you had mentioned, being a practicer of yoga. Like that was something that when I started, it was like, oh yeah, do yoga, blah, blah. And it's like, wait, but why do I care? And same with like surfing. It's okay. Oh yeah, I surf, cool. And then it's like, but why? who cares? Like, why does it matter that you're this person that's taking on this story? It's like, just be who you are. And you're only doing a disservice to yourself by needing to put these fronts up or needing to attach so wholeheartedly to those stories. And it's a killer. And being able to just recognize that, how that's holding you back, I think is so important as a parent, as a human, as everything.
Yeah, I totally agree, and um, Ram Dass, I'll refer to him as Baba throughout our conversation. So that's who that is. I learned a ton from Baba. If you don't know the story of Ram Dass, I'm not going to fill up our conversation with it. You can Google
Please do.
there's I will. Don't push me, man. I will. I know a ton of stories. Um, anyway, so Baba has this quote like this that he says, and he says, like, when we go out into the forest and we see these trees, we just allow them to be what they are. It could be an oak tree, a maple tree, a pine tree, a pitch pine, whatever, right? We can see like maybe why they're bent, right? Or we can see that some are like really tall and some are really thin, or some have fallen over, or we just allow them to be. We don't even think of it. It's like, oh, I can see why that tree's leaning this way because the sun's coming in that way, or I can see that this tree is small because this one's blocking the shade. And then he's like, when I come out of the forest and I see people, I immediately start judging them, putting them into all these categories. He's like, so my life's work is turning people into trees. And I think of that sometimes, right? Like turning people into trees. And like I mentioned before, like letting people be what they are. I don't need to know your story. Like your chapter they don't read out loud, the one that you hold tight, I don't need to know that. All of that is irrelevant. It's just about loving that person. And as a parent, I think that, we, want our kids to be better than we are. A couple weeks ago on TikTok, somebody said like, if we look at the word discipline, there's the word disciple in there. And he talks about like Jesus and like, his disciples and like, why did they follow? Because they loved him and he loved them. So they followed him around. So our kids are like disciples of us. They love us and they follow us around. So if we lead by example, there's not like this discipline we have to instill. Like if we live that way, that's going to be like if at every night when you guys ate dinner, you ate dinner like this, right? And you put your finger on your nose, your daughter will grow up thinking that everybody eats like this. And then she's going to go to your mom's house or whoever, right? And she's going to go, Mimi, wearing your finger on your nose. And she's like, what are you talking about? So it's like they're learning from us. Like we're the leaders. So like if you spend so much of your time like undoing all the generational stuff, and again, totally important and not to dismiss it, 100% important. But if you spend like all of your time undoing that, like you're not living in that moment with them. You're so consumed with like, oh, I'm going to not do this, or, my parents did this or my parents did that, and I'm going to do the opposite. It's like, well, why don't you just be here and figure it out for yourself, man? Because as you know, like you're a new dad, dude, and it's so great, like the first time you hear them like look at you and dad, you're just like, nothing else. It's all good. You don't care what your credit score is at that time or how much money you have saved up. Like when they lay on your chest or they hold your hand, and like the smell of the baby, oh, man, it's so good, and it just gets cooler as they get older. And sometimes it gets a little bit more annoying, like when they start like, yo, bruh, and I'm like, dude, come on, but like, it's cool. And again, it's like you had mentioned, like being a surfer and being practicing yoga. And it's like you're identifying with all of these things. Like you're not those things. Those are just experiences. They're not definitions. And I think as parents, like we live in that definition realm. Like this defines me. Being a dad is my job. No, it's not. Loving and being a good example and turning people into trees. So my kids learn. Like, I never even noticed that so-and-so's skin was a different shade than mine, or I never even noticed that blah, 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 blah. That's when I'm like, good job. You did it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
giving them the opportunity, because then it's like we're just filling them with like, don't like that person because blah, blah, blah. Who cares? As long as I always tell my kids, like, I don't care what you do in life, just don't be a dick. That's what I say to them. Like, just don't.
That
I don't care
simple.
what you do. You want to go to college? No? Fine. You want to, marry this person, that person, you want to identify. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to love you always, no matter what it is that you do. I think is so important. Like we had talked about earlier. And, you had shared that like those important moments in your life was hearing like that admiration or that accreditation from your parents. And like imagine instilling that you had that from when you were 7 months old, like you're going to do to your daughter and you're not, it's all good, babe. Like, hey, everybody falls down. Come on, let's try to walk again. Come to mama, come to dad. Like you're going to enjoy all these new moments. And as a parent, it's like when we're stuck in the other stuff, it's like, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have done more. You can, well, we live in a society, right? You have to pay, you have rent, you have mortgage, you have bills, you have utilities, you have to eat. But like, do you need 6 bedrooms in a house? Like, do you need 4 cars and 2 pieces of property and, this or that? Do you need to go 3 times a week for blah, 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 blah? I don't know. Maybe you do. But like, in my opinion, it's like you take away one of those things and you can experience 10 more. It's kind of silly not to,
Yeah.
but that's been the big thing. And that's how I approach parenting, to like kind of circle back to your original question, like being a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, how does it influence me being as a parent is, like I shared, like the awareness and the love. And it's like, I know that this experience is not a definition and I just allow it to be what it is. I follow this internal thing where it's like, I imagine myself 80 years or 100 years or 200 years in the future. And like, I was granted a one wish. And this was the wish that I was granted to be like, I just wish that I could be with my kids one more time when they were 4, 8, and 12. And this is that moment that I was given. You know what I mean? So like, I really just try to always reel myself back in, so to speak, like keep myself as present as possible. And sometimes I'm like, the other night, like my kids talking to me and I'm like, you know what I mean? And they're like, Dad, I'm like, my bad, because I'm human. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But I think as parents, like living in like the undoing, we spend so much, like, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're not being a parent. You're not like that authentic, like, man, remember the fear you had 8 months ago when you're like, oh my gosh, babe, like our baby's gonna be born. Like, am I gonna be a good dad? Like, you're gonna be a good mom? I know you're gonna be a good mom, but like, I don't know. And then, and like you have all this fear. And then all of a sudden, like, what did you do? You just loved your daughter. You didn't do
Yeah.
anything different, dude. You know what I mean? Like you loved your daughter. The moment you saw, like, when the moment that I saw my kids being born, like I was crying and I was like, I've never loved anything more than this. Like if something were to come in the way of that, I would do very un-yoga like things to that thing to make sure that never happens. But I didn't have to do anything. I wasn't like, oh, let me prepare myself. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have to do anything. I just literally existed, you know? And that was it. I was like, okay, well, let me do that and love them. I think that's all I had to do. So
It's simple. It's
yes,
really
agreed.
not as complex as
Kind of. I
as
mean, it's simple on paper, but is it so simple to do, you know?
it's not so simple to do, but yeah, I think that's the other thing, the parenting concepts and this and that. Just accept and love, like you
Yeah.
said.
There's so
It's
many books about it, right? Like there's so many, like you go to these seminars and these parenting things, like, am I a good parent? Am I a good parent? I'm going to give every parent the quickest version to ask yourself, are you a good parent? Do you love your kids? If the answer is yes, then you're a great parent. That's all. Quiz is over.
yeah.
You passed. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. But like, we need to fall into like, I need to be the class dad or the sports dad or the, you know, like, do you want to
Yeah.
try this? No. Okay. You want to try this? No. Okay. You know, like that's it. It's simple. Just love your kids, period. So, but again,
Yeah.
easier said than done.
Yeah. That's the truth. That's the truth. Well, I got one final question for you
For
that I
sure.
like to ask all guests, and I'm excited to hear your answer on this one. If you could offer just one piece of advice to anybody listening right now, whether it's a mindset tip or a practical parenting tip, whatever it might be, what would that be and why?
One piece of advice. Replay this podcast.
Over and over and
One
over.
piece of advice. Don't take it too serious. Nobody gets out alive. It's just life. Don't take it too serious. You're going to have really good times and tough times that may seem, but don't take it serious and spend time with yourself. Take yourself out on a date by yourself. And it's harder as parents, right? You're important, even if that means just, hey, I'm 20% today. I need you to pick up a little bit. And then your, significant other will say like, hey, I'm at 20% today, or I just need a minute. I'm just going to go. When our middle son was young, maybe around your daughter's age, maybe a little bit younger. And my wife like exclusively breastfed and he wouldn't take a bottle. I'm like, oh, come on, dude. Like, I want to help her out, but like, I can't do anything, like I'll
I feel
change
that.
diapers, but I'm like, oh, dude, like I tried the bottle. I like cut shirts and I'm like, here, it's me, mom. Like, you know what I mean? Nope. Just wanted mom. So one night she had like gone back to teaching. So he was definitely like, 3 months or so older. She hadn't got back to teaching. She came back and I was like, I couldn't. He was just screaming the entire time. And I remember like going like this. I'm like, here you are. I'll be back in a little bit. And I drove to Wawa. I backed my car into a dark spot in the parking lot. I went inside. I got a can of soda of root beer. I stood outside of my car. I dug in my car into my center console, pulled out an American Spirit, lit that, smoked a cigarette, drank a root beer, came home, and I was totally okay. So that's why I say, like, don't take it so serious and really learn to love yourself in all different forms that love is. Baba used to talk about grace all the time. The grace is, he said, like, when he got his debilitating stroke and he was left paralyzed on one side of his body, he said, I don't wish the stroke on anyone. I wish the grace that the stroke has given me on everyone. And I remember hearing that. I thought to myself, like, you're thankful for a stroke? Man, I am so far from being enlightened. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be a stroke, right? It doesn't need to be something that monumental, and hopefully it doesn't. So just, don't take it so serious. It's just life. And use all your PTO, use all your vacation days, use all your mental health days, but don't take it so serious and enjoy the cookies
I,
always.
I think that's huge. Just remembering that every single one of us is born with a terminal illness. We're all going to die. And
Yeah,
some
that's
people,
it.
some people that's like, well, take it easy.
I know.
Don't
Not
do it.
me. Like, I'm
Yeah.
vegan. I do this. I'm like, cool. Doesn't
Yeah, but
matter.
you're going to die one day. Enjoy it.
Yeah, like it's the inevitability, and working with people that when I was in the hospital working in the oncology department and people were stage 4 diagnosis and stuff of cancer and things of that nature, kind of being in that last experience for them, you know what I mean? As they're ending their human experience, there was a lot of sadness, of regret, and like no one at once ever was like, man, you know what? I wish I worked more. Like
Yeah.
I wish I, didn't take as many vacation days. Like no one ever said that to me. Everyone was like, you're living it, dude. Like you're home with your kids all the time. Do it, man. Because one day they're going to get old and they're going to move out and then you're going to be like, now what? So
Yeah.
really appreciate you reaching out and I'm really happy we were able to get our schedules to align and to get this done. I was really looking forward to it and kind of preparing myself. And I'm like, oh, what is he going to ask? But I'm glad that we were able to link up. And, I wish you a ton of success in all that you do. And congratulations again on being a dad. I mean, it's such a great, great role. And feel free. And, any of your listeners have any questions and we'll reach out to you and you can reach out to me. Like, I'm here to help in any way that I can. And, You'll never out-weird me. So if you think it's weird and you're like, "Oh, man, this is so weird. He's totally gonna judge me." Dude, it's never gonna happen. You cannot out-weird me. I am one of the weirdest, so don't worry about that. I've gotten some pretty interesting scenarios, if we'll call it, thrown my way. So, I wish, you and your family just decades of health and love. Honestly, man, it's really great, to see you doing this, and, I'm super proud of you for doing it.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation, and thank you for fitting me into your busy schedule.
Sure
And
thing.
yeah, this was awesome. I couldn't ask for anything better. And I think we might need to have another separate episode just talking about Ram Dass and
I'm
Maharaji
down.
and all
I'm
that.
down, man. I am down. They adorn my altar. They've been such a way, like if people out there and listeners are interested in hearing stories, there's and you're like more into like, obviously listening because we're a podcast. East Forest, so the direction east, and forest like the place, which is one R, not two, like the gum. East Forest and Ram Dass. If you ask your smart speaker, you'll have to say Ram Dass. I don't know why, but anyway,
Damn ass.
yeah, exactly right. But they put together some really cool stories, and there's great stories of Baba like meeting Maharaji for the first time in India, and like having this thought of his mom, and Maharaji looked at him and he said, "You were thinking of your mother last night," and Baba's like, "What? Like, how would you know that?" And he's like, "This person's looking at me with so much love," and he's like, "And then that point, I felt like I loved everyone." So I think to myself, like, what if I looked at people with that same love, and then they felt like they loved everyone? So anytime, man, we can do a Ram Dass podcast for sure. I'm totally game.
And that album, I second that recommendation
Oh,
because
right? It's
every
so good.
time, like, I'll put all my songs on shuffle and I'll be like, need the right song to come on. And that will just, I guess you can consider it a song. It's more so, like you said, like talks, but perfect. Every single time it's perfect. It comes on and you need to hear it. And you're like, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. He always knows. He always knows.
All right. Well, website, what is it? Just the Yoga
The Yoga
Hive.
Hive NJ. Yep. The
Okay.
yogahivenj.com. Facebook, Instagram, all the same handle, the Yoga Hive NJ. Yeah, check us out. I mean, if you're local, we offer stuff online. I'm not really like a great salesman, but if you're feeling like, you want to be loved a little bit more, then come through. The men out there, just, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of where I post all the meetings. This month will be the 26th, is a Friday, 6:30 p.m. And we can do it via Zoom as well. So if you're not local to New Jersey, like, I can provide you with a Zoom link, and it's, free to come in. I'm not going to ask you or bother you like, "Oh, hey, suggested donation," is none of that, just show up. If you want to share, cool. If you don't, cool. Just being there is enough. So yeah, feel free to check us out and reach out if you have any questions, so.
Amazing. Yeah. Connect with them. He's an awesome guy, in case you haven't
Appreciate
figured that out by now.
it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Much love, everybody. We will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you did enjoy it, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with a friend to help us grow. That would be greatly appreciated if you can do that. Inside the Tide is now streaming on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. You can also find social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and links to those pages can be found in the show notes below. You can find some clips and sneak peeks to upcoming episodes on those social media pages. I'm also very close to publishing my first nature-based activity book for parents to incorporate with their children, which I'll have some more information about at the conclusion of next week's episode. And that's about it. I appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in and taking the time to listen to the show today. And I will see you on next week's episode.